There is a ton of stuff happening in crypto right now, and some of it's really, really good. And it's just in the last few hours, I haven't even seen videos or anyone posting about it. Some pretty big things that are happening with the SEC pretty much being beaten down in court. So we're going to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about what Jerome Powell said, but not too much because it was pretty obvious what he was going to say, and I think he just reiterated what he said in the past, but the market's obviously sold off from that here today, and there's a reason for that, but we're going to talk about that. If you don't mind hitting the subscribe button underneath the video, I appreciate that. There are also links in case you want to try out Webull or moomoo and start buying stocks there. You can get a ton of free stocks if you just deposit $100 on the platform, which is free money at this point. Now, I'm going to brush through some of the stuff that Jerome Powell said. First of all, the overall speech was basically him talking to Congress, and they were getting in their sound bites. It was a little bit hard to listen to for the most part, but some of the main points were they're expecting higher interest rates and a faster pace than what they were expecting before. Basically, they're not seeing as much disinflation as they were at the previous meeting. We had, a couple bad prints. We had some revisions upward from previous prints. Now they're expecting the rates to stay higher for longer. They're saying it's hard to get inflation down, and there are no clear signs of it actually coming down at this point. Now, Jerome Powell also said, specifically to crypto, stablecoins need some attention, and that they don't want regulation to stifle innovation, but they see fraud, they see lack of transparency, and they see run risk. So trying to be careful about not pushing too much offshore, but we'll talk about that here in a second with the SEC really losing a couple important battles for them. But we saw Jerome Powell speak, I think, a little bit more hawkish than the market was expecting. So we didn't talk about crypto too much specifically. Mostly he talked about the economy, inflation, that kind of thing, talking about jobs. Again, people were trying to get their sound bites in, like Warren said to Powell, we need a Fed that will fight for families, and if you're not going to lead that charge, we need someone at the Fed who will. And this is kind of unbelievable to listen to because we have seen Congress continuously push out more stimulus, and the Fed maybe could have started raising rates a little bit more aggressively or a little bit sooner, but they're the ones that are really trying to fight and getting all the flack for fighting inflation while Congress keeps on pushing up higher and higher budgets. So kind of hard to listen to. So that's why I don't want to keep it too long. But then the market priced this in. Basically, they priced in the fact that there's going to be a higher rate increase. And now there's about a 60% probability of a 50 basis point hike at the next meeting. So a couple implications of that, then we'll move on. First of all, that means risk assets are going to have a tough time. Now, this is priced into the market now. So if we get a 50 basis point hike, we could probably still see the market fall down. That means that there's still a 40% chance that we're only going to see 25 basis points. So that's the worst of two options for the market. But the market also likes to see, the market likes to know what's going to happen next. So, there's some people that probably think that we would actually move up a little bit with a 50 basis point hike just because the market can now know what we're going to do going forward. There's less of a chance probably that we'll need to do 50 basis points at the next one if we have 50 basis points this one. But a lot of this is going to ride on CPI next week, right? This could all change, and then the market would move right back up. Another implication, well, mortgages will probably move up. Treasuries will probably move up. They were already moving up today. It's going to be a lot better to have cash because you'll get a higher percent or APY. But keep in mind, eventually there will be that flip where people are getting really high rates, but they're not going to want to keep on investing in 1-year treasuries because these growth stocks and cryptos and stuff like that will be so beaten down that they know over the next few years they're going to have to buy growth stocks because rates will start coming down. So this obviously, like I said, affected crypto. It moved down a little bit through the day. Now actually moving up a little bit. It bounced off 22,000, Bitcoin did. And you can start to see some other cryptos too falling down a little bit in the last 24 hours. But now, like I said, bouncing up a little bit. The stock market was down as well. NASDAQ down about 1.5% or so. The reason that I think the market's doing pretty well right now, I say pretty well, right? We're barely moving around right now. We've been pretty much stuck at 22 to 22,600 for the last few days, if not longer. You can see just barely any volatility. But we were bouncing against 22 and it looked like we might actually fall through it, but there was some news. First of all, Binance US can move ahead with plan to acquire Voyager Digital assets. So the bankruptcy judge in the Voyager Digital case chose to allow the deal with Binance US to go through. They said objections from the US SEC Commission weren't valid. They basically said that the implications of not letting Binance US buy the assets were worse than having them buy them. So they overruled the SEC. That's loss number one for the SEC. And now there's also news, and you might have seen this today, GBTC has been popping up. It actually was up about 10% here today when Bitcoin was actually down on the back of the Grayscale versus SEC hearing. According to this source, there was an absolute beatdown in the courtroom today. Grayscale is now the heavy betting favorite to win the case. And it's not just one person on Twitter saying this. This is coming from Bloomberg, saying Grayscale turns the table on SEC at spot Bitcoin ETF argument. They say that this could eventually get approved, and it would unlock $5.5 billion in value for GBTC shareholders. So obviously, the market's starting to price this in. Like I said, 10% up on the day. The discount went from 42% discount, I believe it was just 42%, now to 35.7%. So this is starting to get gobbled up as 13.9 billion in assets under management. So you could think of this as a good arbitrage opportunity if you do think that they're going to get a spot Bitcoin ETF to go invest in Grayscale or GBTC. That's what's happening right now. Is basically people are piling into this thinking that this is some nice beta or some nice alpha, and they can get a nice 35% increase from here on out if it just gets approved, and that discount to NAV will basically be gobbled up, and it will go right back up because people can withdraw their Bitcoin essentially, and the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust will move exactly with Bitcoin's price. And the reason that they're saying this, why the judge is saying this, is basically because the SEC has been fighting that futures ETF can't be pushed around in price as much as a spot ETF. Like there's going to be less of a risk that someone could take advantage of the ETF and manipulate prices. But the judge is basically saying, hey, the majority of the time, ETFs move with the price of Bitcoin. And we've seen that, right? When Bitcoin's up a lot, GBTC is up a lot. When Bitcoin's down a lot, GBTC is down a lot. So there's not really a good reason not to get this as a spot ETF. There can actually be more manipulation this way, I think. So I think this is great. Another way to play this, even if you don't want to buy GBTC, because if it doesn't get approved or if it lasts longer, that could be bad for the discount. You could just buy Bitcoin. I think that just like we said in the last bull run, a spot ETF being approved would be massive. That'd be massive because people can start investing in this and it will be thought of more highly. You could just start buying this in retirement accounts. I mean, you can do that already, but it's much more likely that a spot ETF would be bought, I think, over the long term. And it also means that people are going to feel confident about buying it as opposed to GBTC because it actually will trade pretty much exactly with Bitcoin. And it will take Bitcoin off the market. People will buy it, hold it for 30 years, not look at it. They'll put, a 0.5% in some portfolio, and then they'll just buy it for the next 40 years until retirement. So I think this is really good for holders. And, there's some stuff that's happening in the background right now, some pretty big moves. Stablecoin just hit exchanges, $1.4 billion, the most that we've seen since last year, at the end of last year. And that is a significant move. 1.4 billion in stablecoin. Moving to exchanges means that people are probably getting ready to buy. Now, part of it could be that there have been some different cryptos like BUSD that are now losing market cap. Maybe it's some people, moving BUSD to exchanges, getting ready to exchange it for something else. Maybe it's trying to get off certain exchanges because they're losing partners basically. And some people are maybe just switching into different cryptos, or maybe they're just trying to get out their money in general, trade it to USD and then get it into a bank account. But I'm thinking the majority of this money is probably people getting ready to buy. Why else would you bring stablecoin to exchanges besides that? So I think that's the main reason. I think people are getting ready to buy. A lot of people have been sitting on the sidelines getting ready to pounce. Now, this is a really awesome graphic here coming from the Rational Root. It is also on Invest Answers YouTube channel, basically showing the different halving cycles and the different cycles for Bitcoin in general. The price is how far out we are. And then as you go around the circle is the time. So this is the first Bitcoin halving here. And then this is the last one out here, if you can see my mouse. And then we are here. So we're basically at 8:30, almost hitting 9 o'clock. Meaning when we hit this 9 o'clock, we're at 3/4 of the way to the next Bitcoin halving. All of the bottoms have happened before 9 o'clock. Most of them have happened around 8 or 7, right around there, meaning that we are looking like we're past the typical bottom area. So if we had this bottom back here, it was right in line with some of the other bottoms. Now, the first bottom was closer to 9 o'clock, but shows that we are moving along. The tops happen, closer to 3 to 5 o'clock. So we are through the worst of it when you look at this metric. Just a cool way of looking at this. And there's no question why we need Bitcoin specifically. Now, some people play it as just a way to benefit from liquidity in the system. Some people buy it because they need insurance against their own currency, and some people don't realize they need insurance because maybe they're in France, maybe they're in the U.S., and our inflation isn't 50% or 40%. It seems like we're able to get through this with normal investments, VOO and index funds and stuff like that. But some of these major countries are still getting hit. For example, French workers are on strike today against President Macron as he plans to raise the retirement age and require 43 years of work for a full pension. Now, this is obviously very against their culture there. People there really like life-work balance in France. But what I found so interesting about this was the government just not having enough money for pensions, right? That's why they're pushing back the pension age. I mean, we need to do that here in the U.S. with Social Security as well, and Medicare and that kind of thing. Governments don't have enough money to be able to deal with all this. It's essentially a Ponzi scheme, right? More people come in, but the amount of people being born has slowed down, right? People can't afford as much, so they're pushing back the time that they're going to have kids, or they want to travel more, stuff like that. So the retirement age is moving up. One other way that governments can help this is if they continue to inflate their own debt. That's what the U.S. is doing, right? If you can print more money, then the debt becomes less and less costly, right? So that's one more reason to hold Bitcoin. There's a set amount that's going to be put on the open market, or that's going to be mined over the coming years, and no one's going to change that, right? It's immutable. There's no way of making more of it besides what's going to be already said. Unlike every other asset in the world where, if real estate becomes more valuable in my town, people come in and start building, or they start buying, they start renting, and, they continue to build more inventory is what I'm trying to get at. If a stock becomes more valuable, if it, 10x's, we saw this with a lot of penny stocks, they'll just offer more shares. They'll raise cash. Bitcoin is the only asset, or one of the only assets that can't make more when it becomes more valuable. I mean, if it was possible, someone probably would have done it already. A couple of years ago when Bitcoin moved up from $1 to $10,000, right? Another thing is it can't be taken away. Unlike every other asset, anything in my room, anything in my house, anything in my life can be taken away. I can be taken away. Like, I can be put in prison. I can have my house taken away if I don't pay property taxes. All that can be taken away. Bitcoin can't, because you can put it in your brain, basically. You can put the passcode, or not the passcode, but you can put the seed phrase in your brain and no one can get a hold of it. So there are outside factors that affect its price, but you actually have access to it all the time and can't be taken away. So just a couple thoughts on that. I want to get back to why Bitcoin's so valuable and maybe talk about that a little bit more in episodes. Now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If I seem a little bit scattered, I've been in the hospital with my wife the last few days, and we just got out. It's been a long day, last 3 or 4 days. So I appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you for staying this far into the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.